Hi there, welcome to this new video on documenting APIs using Eclipse MicroProfile OpenAPI in Quarkus. So let's get started. What is OpenAPI specification? So according to the documentation, it defines a standard language agnostic interface to HTTP APIs, which allows both humans and computers to discover and understand the capabilities of the service without access to source code, documentation, or through network traffic inspection. So in other words, it is a way to express our REST APIs in a format which is readable by humans as well as computers, right? For example, you might have used UMB diagrams to express the interaction between classes of your application, right? So that UMB diagram is agnostic of the language that you're using. Then let's understand through an example. For example, this is a small representation of the REST API that we built in the last video. So this is a YAML file, and in the first line we define the version of the OpenAPI we are using, then information, then the paths of the REST API. For example, we have /book. If we send a GET request to the /book, what the possible responses are 200, right? And the content is application /JSON schema, an array with items of type book, right? Similarly, we can even describe schema. For example, we have defined how a book should look like, and we have referenced it here. So next is Eclipse MicroProfile OpenAPI. So it is also an specification that allows us to create OpenAPI v3 documents from the JAX-RS applications, right? So if you're creating a JAX-RS application, then this Eclipse MicroProfile OpenAPI will help us to create the documents. So it understands the JAX-RS annotations. For example, we use @path, @get. So it will understand that, as well as it provides some extra annotations. Then these are the key annotations. For example, API response. We can define how the response will look like, right? Then the operation, what the operation the API performs, or the endpoint parameter. So for example, we took ID as a parameter for a GET request. So we can define if it is required or not, what is an ID, etc. Then there is request body. So how does a request body look like? What are its contents, etc. So let's dive right into the code. Here is our project. So what I'll do is I'll copy this project so that progress is saved separately. So I have copied the project that we built last time and renamed it to OpenAPI demo. Now what we'll need to do is to add the Eclipse MicroProfile OpenAPI. So what we'll do is mwinw Quarkus add extension and specify the extension. So we'll be using Quarkus OpenAPI, which is the implementation of Eclipse MicroProfile OpenAPI specification. I'll press enter, and it shall add. So now if we go to the pom.xml, under the dependencies, we'll see Quarkus OpenAPI. Right now, if I run the application, /mwinw Quarkus dev. So now if I go to localhost 8080, so, and if I go to /q/OpenAPI, it will download a file. So this is our OpenAPI v3 document. right? We did not add anything. We just added the Quarkus small I OpenAPI extension, and it was able to generate a document for us, right? So as you can see, we have /book, then we have a post request to /book, which has a request body, right? We provide the book in the request body, and in response we get a book, right, which was added. Then we have /book/id. It takes in parameter id, which is path parameter, right? It is required, yes. Then in response we get 200. Then we have put request, right? So yeah, and in the components we have a schema of book, so it defines how the book shall look like. So yeah, but you'll notice that in the responses it says 200, but what if we are not able to find a book with the given id? So it should also give a response of 404 or 204, right? So the MicroProfile OpenAPI also provides some custom annotations to do that. So let's see what are those. I'm again at my project. I'll go to the book controller, and so first thing what we can do is add @ operation. So let me reload the project. So with @ operation we can provide information about what the endpoint does. So we can provide the summary. So what it does is returns the list of all books, right? Similarly, here we can add operation summary returns book with the given id, right? So if I again generate the OpenAPI doc, so what I'll do is /q OpenAPI, and so you can see summary returns the list of all books, and then another is returns book with given id. So operation added the summary, right? So let's add more annotations. Now what we can do is add an API response. For example, I want to tell what will be the response. So first of all, let's add the response code. So if the response is, let's say, 404, then what will be the description? Book not found, right? And if the API response is code is 200, which means book was found, right? So we can do that. Now after that, for example, we need to describe the parameters as well. So it provides a annotation called parameter, and then inside the parameter we can provide a description of the parameter, which is id of the requested book, right? And is it required? Yes, it is required. Let's generate the OpenAPI doc again, and I'll again go to /q OpenAPI. It will download the doc again, and if you see, for ID we had two responses. So these are the responses: book not found and book was found, right? Also in parameters, you can see it says the description and required true, right? Now, so now let's see, for example, in the post request, the request body contains a book that will be added to the database. So we can even describe the request body for the post request. So we have a annotation called request body. So is it required? Yes, we need to send the request body. Then content, what is the content? So the media type will be application.json, right? Then schema, right? So it will be book. So implementation will be of book dot class. So right. So this is how the request body will look like. Then there is response body as well. For example, if we go above in the API response, get all, let's say. So let's say the API response for get all endpoint. So the response code will be 200, right? Then we can define the content. Content will be application.json, right? Media type dot application.json, right? But it will be an array, right? So first of all, let's schema will be of a book, right? Implementation of a book. At the same time, the type will be an array, right? Schema type dot array. So let's now again generate the OpenAPI doc. So and now, for example, the response content will be application.json, schema type array, and the items will be book, right? Also, we added the request body for post. So if we go down, right? So the request body, the content is application.json and the schema is this, right? So this is it. We also have one more thing. So the OpenAPI, small.ri OpenAPI implementation also comes with Swagger UI. So let us go to the browser, and if I go to /Swagger UI, so it represents our API in this graphical format, right? So this Swagger UI consumes the OpenAPI v3 doc and creates this graphical representation for us. So for example, right, it tells us the response is 200, media type will be application.json and example value, and we can try it out. So if I execute, right, it returns all the rest of all the books, right? So let's also try a post request to try it out. Then I'll press execute. And yes, now if I get all, it shall, right, it returns our last added object. So this is it. Let's meet in the next video. Bye bye.